She told me she was just going to grab a drink. 5 minutes tops. And that's the last time I saw my baby alive. Aliyah's mother in tears outside the crime scene. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon in the Bronx. Just another sticky summer day when teenagers lingered on corners, music thumped faintly from passing cars, and life in Williamsbridge flowed as it always had. Loud, unbothered, pulsing with a rhythm only New York knows. But July 15th, 2025 shattered that rhythm. At approximately 3:50 p.m., 16-year-old Aliyah Williams stepped into Deli Grocery, a small, familiar corner store at 3511 Boston Road, a spot she and her friends visited often after school or just to cool off. She wasn't there for long. Less than 10 minutes later, she would be bleeding out on the concrete, stabbed multiple times, her young life slipping away just feet from where she used to joke with the store clerk about hot chips and iced teas. What happened inside that deli in those final minutes has horrified the city, sparked outrage on social media, and left yet another black family grieving the violent loss of their child. A girl who hadn't even finished high school, a girl who had dreams of studying fashion, and a girl who never got to say goodbye. This is the story of Aliyah Williams, her murder, the accused killer, the confusion, and the chilling question: what could drive another teenager to kill with such sudden, intimate brutality? Over something as small as a splash of water. Aliyah wasn't just another face in a crowd. She was vibrant, sharp-witted, the kind of teenager who stood out. Her TikTok page was full of dance videos, day-in-the-life clips, and little rants about school drama. Her friends called her Leah, a nickname that stuck since middle school. She was raised by a single mother and lived just a few blocks from the deli where she was killed. Family described her as sweet but spicy, a straight talker with a big heart. She had 2 younger siblings she helped care for, and a soft spot for fashion. She talked about applying to design schools once she graduated. She wasn't in the streets, her cousin said in a TikTok live the night after her death. She was chill, stayed to herself. But even girls who stay to themselves aren't safe, not when teenage anger turns to violence in the blink of an eye. The Deli Grocery on Boston Road is the kind of place nearly every Bronx teen knows, a one-stop shop for snacks, sodas, and quick gossip. It's not far from Evander Childs High School, where many local kids attend. Surveillance footage shows Aliyah entering the store around 3:50 p.m., dressed casually, phone in hand. Inside the store at that moment was another teen girl, 17 years old, also local, name still withheld due to her age. The two apparently had a history, not friends, not full-on enemies, but tensions had brewed before. Words were exchanged. Witnesses claim that Aliyah threw water from a plastic bottle at the girl, a petty, impulsive gesture, probably meant as an insult or challenge. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. Without warning, the 17-year-old suspect pulled out a knife she had on her. Police haven't confirmed if it was concealed or visible beforehand. In the cramped space between snack aisles and the counter, she lunged at Aliyah, stabbing her multiple times, in the face, chest, and torso. The entire confrontation lasted less than 20 seconds. Customers inside began screaming. The store clerk called 911, but by the time Aliyah stumbled outside, blood soaking her shirt, it was already too late. A passerby tried to apply pressure to her wounds. Paramedics arrived within minutes. She was rushed to Jacobi Medical Center, but pronounced dead at 4:27 p.m. She had just turned 16. The NYPD was flooded with calls immediately following the stabbing. Witnesses pointed officers toward security footage from the deli's interior, which clearly showed the suspect. Using street cameras and community tips, police located and arrested the 17-year-old girl just after 7:30 p.m., roughly 4 hours later, still in the Bronx. She was charged with murder, manslaughter, criminal possession of a weapon. The weapon, described as a folding knife, was later recovered. Police haven't disclosed whether the suspect brought the knife intentionally to confront Aliyah, or if it was something she carried regularly. The motive remains disturbingly vague. Was it an explosion of rage, jealousy, a grudge held too long? No adult is involved, no gang ties confirmed, just 2 teenagers, one dead, one behind bars, all over a confrontation that escalated past the point of no return. News of Aliyah's death spread like wildfire online. Her name trended locally on TikTok and Instagram. Friends posted old dance videos. "She didn't deserve this," one caption read. The surveillance footage, blurred but unmistakable, began circulating, showing the moment she was attacked. Community activists called out the lack of conflict resolution programs in local schools. "These girls needed help long before this," said one local youth counselor. "Now one is gone, and the other might spend her life in a cell." "I held her when she took her first breath. And I held her again after she took her last. This pain, there's no name for it." Aliyah's mother, days after the funeral. The killing of Aliyah Williams wasn't just another headline in a long string of youth violence plaguing New York. This one struck something deeper. It wasn't about gangs, it wasn't about drugs. It was about a teenage girl who never made it home from a neighborhood store. A girl stabbed by someone almost her own age over something so small, so ordinary, that it shook the public to its core. In the days following the attack, a steady stream of mourners arrived at the scene outside Deli grocery. Candles flickered beneath the metal gate. Balloons tied to the stop sign fluttered in the breeze. Friends scribbled messages in permanent marker across poster boards. "Long live Liar. This world failed you. You were loved." The community, already tired, already grieving too many young lives lost, found itself asking the same haunting question: how did we get here again? On July 16, 2025, just one day after the stabbing, the unnamed 17-year-old suspect was brought before a family court judge in Bronx criminal court. Dressed in a loose-fitting grey hoodie and sweatpants, her hands were cuffed, her expression unreadable. Her attorney argued she acted in self-defense, that she was provoked and that Aliyah had previously harassed her. But the prosecution pushed back hard. They pointed to the surveillance footage and eyewitness accounts. There was no immediate threat, no weapon in Aliyah's hands, no attack launched from her side. The water, they said, was not justification for deadly force. The judge sided with prosecutors. The teen was remanded to juvenile detention without bail. Because of her age, her name and records remain sealed. But prosecutors are pushing for the case to be transferred to adult court, citing the severity and premeditation of the stabbing. If the court agrees, she could face 25 years to life in prison. Aliyah's mother, Aliyah Williams, hadn't spoken publicly for the first 48 hours. He was too broken. But by July 17, she stood outside the Deli, surrounded by cameras, holding her daughter's photo. A school portrait where Aliyah wore a yellow shirt and a quiet smile. "This is my baby," she said through tears. She went to get a Snapple, a damn Snapple. She should have come home in 10 minutes. She never made it. And now I have to bury my child. Over what? A bottle of water? A stare? What kind of world is this? She described Aliyah as a little stubborn but never violent. Someone who could argue but always walked away from fights. She was never in trouble, never got suspended. She liked makeup and dancing. She was my whole heart. Though school was out for the summer, administrators at Evander Childs High School, where both girls attended, released a statement. "We are devastated by the tragic loss of Aliyah Williams. She was a bright, promising student whose life ended far too soon. Crisis counselors will be made available, and we are working closely with city officials to prevent future incidents of youth violence." Several of Aliyah's classmates spoke anonymously to local outlets. Many said tensions had been building between her and the suspect, rumors, social media back and forth, nothing that seemed deadly, nothing anyone thought would go this far. "She didn't like her, that's true," said one friend. "But it wasn't like they were gonna fight to the death. Leah would have just rolled her eyes and kept it pushing. We all talk online, but nobody thinks it's gonna end like this." Aliyah's death became one of the most discussed tragedies on TikTok within 48 hours. Clips of her final moments, blurred surveillance stills, reactions, even audio snippets were reposted by hundreds of accounts. Some sought justice, some chased views. The hashtag Justice for Aliyah trended locally, then nationally. But not all the attention was supportive. A disturbing trend of reenactment videos, teens role-playing the stabbing for clout, sparked outrage. TikTok issued takedown notices. Instagram followed, but the damage had been done. Aliyah's mother pleaded for people to stop using her child for content. "This isn't a joke," she said in a follow-up interview. "My daughter was murdered. That deli floor still has her blood on it. And y'all are pretending like it's a skit? Have some damn respect." While the Williams family buried their child, the suspect's family stayed mostly silent. But a neighbor who spoke anonymously to the press said the suspect had been troubled for a while and hinted at problems at home. She had a lot going on. Her mum's barely around, she was angry a lot, always fighting someone on Instagram or at school. That's what made this tragedy harder to swallow. It wasn't a simple case of a bad kid killing a good kid. These were two girls from two broken places whose pain collided in one horrifying instant. Now one is dead. The other may spend her entire life behind concrete walls. The funeral on July 22nd, 2025 was broadcast by several local news stations. Her mother, Letitia, stood before a sea of tear-streaked faces and tried to find words. "My daughter didn't die in a war. She didn't die in a car crash. She died on a sidewalk in front of a store, over a water bottle and a stare." She paused. "This shouldn't be normal. I don't want your sympathy. I want your anger. I want your voice. Because if it can happen to my baby, it can happen to yours." There was a long silence after that, then applause, then sobs, and outside, the streets were quiet. No honking, no arguing, no music. Just silence for a girl they all knew too late. Aliyah's grandmother, who raised her for much of her early life, gave a tearful statement outside the courthouse. "She wanted to be a nurse. She loved people. She loved babies. They didn't just take my granddaughter. They took someone who was going to help the world." If this story moved you, share it, comment below, and let your voice be part of the justice Aliyah deserves. Subscribe for more real stories that demand our attention and maybe, just maybe, our action.